Welcome back to another episode with ByrdAdatto. Today we're going to hit a whole bunch of loans, and it sounds like I feel like every Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday we keep talking about all the different loans that the government has. And what has happened, obviously, is there's been a lot of chaos with the pandemic, and that meant there was chaos with laws and now regulations being released. And so we're obviously trying to keep up with what's happening. And so as of last week, the SBA had dripped out some more Q&A questions as it relates to the PPP funds. And then on Friday evening, May 15th, the SBA and Treasury Department finally released what the application is going to look like if you are one of those individuals who did get the PPP loans and is asking for forgiveness. So now we at least have an 11-page document with lots of explanations on forms and substance as to what you need to present to the government to get this forgiveness. There are a lot of different takeaways, and we're not going to spend that much time on it because there's some other things we'll talk about. With certain things in there, it appears there is some language in there that if you are an owner of a company or a sole proprietor, that you may have some limitations as to how much is forgivable as far as your salary goes. So issuing additional bonus and stuff. Again, if you look at the reps and warrants, there's a little takeaway that is in there. There's some also other pieces in there that, again, it does seem to be that they're pushing that to get forgiveness, full forgiveness for the loan, that the vast majority of these funds were used for payroll. So again, all those are things that we've been consistently talking about, to be careful about. It appears that the SBA and Treasury Department are now following through on certain aspects of things we previously talked about. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit, Michael, not spend too much time on this loan application, forgiveness application, but I want to start talking about a couple of things that have come up in the sense of how you should be viewing these Q&As that are coming out. So one of the things we're talking about is a safe harbor came out recently last week that talked about if you had less than $2 million worth of funds from the PPP. So if you took less than $2 million, you're basically deemed that you're one of those people that they're not just going to randomly audit you. That's the safe harbor they have out there. So we talked last week about, hey, if you do get these PPP funds, we recommend doing some type of corporate resolution saying why you went out and got these funds. And so let me ask you the first question as a follow-up to last week. Do you still think that someone who got the PPP funds and was less than $2 million, should they still go through that process?
Well, first I'll acknowledge that this is great news because there was a lot of uncertainty when they were really starting to relook at whether that certification was appropriate and did you really need the money. And with all the big PPP borrowers out there that have returned money and that give us window, we were asking ourselves, how does this apply to our clients who are by definition almost all small businesses who we're generally borrowing less than $500,000 in PPP funds. So this is great from the standpoint that they've acknowledged this safe harbor. I would still suggest as a best practice that you still take the time to have a consent or some form of documentation at the time that you applied that, by the officer or, manager of your entity, as to why you decided to apply for this fund. A couple of reasons for that. One is this is the government, and we never know what's going to happen later. And if they are, for some reason, maybe even a different reason, looking back at your company's application for PPP, this is just another piece of documentation justifying the decision. And the second thing is, if you have other owners in your business, you have a fiduciary obligation to them, and you want to be able to show kind of the thinking and due diligence that you went into making the business decision as a fiduciary to apply for the PPP.
And I totally agree with that. And the second thing is, as you were alluding to, the government has a really long memory. Often they love to come back in after the fact and ask questions. And this could be 6-8 years from now, wanting to know why you did something. And so remember, that documentation aspect, at least on the why you got the loan, is going to be important. And then for those who want to get it forgiven, which we were just we're talking a little bit about, is there is an entire process at this moment. They're laying it out as to what you're supposed to do. Now, Michael, it's been released on May 15th. Supposedly this is it, but I know there's a lot of other things going on that you've read about, we've seen, and the discussions as to, is this really the application, or there can be some other modifications in general to how you get forgiven?
Well, this is it, and they are promising further guidance. So, even those that have the application, they have committed, the SBA and Treasury Department have committed to giving more guidance on that. It's 11 pages. We haven't even fully digested it yet, but that's at least encouraging that there's still hope for more. And then the other thing that I found fascinating is the Wall Street Journal posted an article, I think yesterday is when it went live, talking about the pressures of making some changes to the PPP and the forgiveness process. And it really touches on what we've been talking about since it came out for well over a month now. We've given several videos and webinars talking about how this 8-week period just doesn't work, and we're expecting something as we're trying to talk to our clients about whether to bring their employees back even though they're closed. And so what this article talks about is two things. One, which may be more likely because it just requires action by the SBA and Treasury Department, and that is potential leniency in the forgiveness part of things through things that they can control without government action. And that may be the use of 75% of the funds towards payroll, and maybe some other things like that that will help make it more lenient to getting forgiveness. And then the second thing the article talks about is kind of a growing sentiment that Congress may actually relook at some of the rules in the program. And particularly what the article talked about was the requirement that your forgiveness is defined by the 8 weeks after you receive the money, and maybe taking action to extend that timeline. And the article really speculates or makes the speculation based on the realization that this 8-week doesn't really work because businesses have been closed longer than they originally thought.
Yeah. And I know we're almost out of time, but I don't know if we want to mention real quick, there are some other loans that the SBA has you could apply for. We're hearing information that, especially with the emergency disaster loan that came out first, that the paperwork from the SBA, the loan documents themselves are starting to come out, and there appears to be a lot of really aggressive language in there, and as it relates to the time frame in which during the time frame in which you're paying back the SBA, that they can put some serious, it can impact your collateral, it can impact your salaries, it can impact whether you make distributions. We still have not had a client receive these loan documents, so we have not actually seen them. Our point to you, though, is if you do receive these documentation from the SBA, make sure you obviously get counsel or your advisor to look at them, because there appears to be some very aggressive language in there as it relates to how you can actually run your business while you're paying back the government. And there's a long time frame for you to do this, so be careful, because again, with anything else, when you submit something to the federal government, if you change or you don't follow that, you're actually falsifying documents that you're submitting to the federal government. So those of you who did get these loans, make sure you have counsel review them. And I don't know if you have anything else to add on that, Michael.
Yeah, the EIDL loan is what everyone refers to it as, and we have had a few clients who received the funds who signed it and told us after the fact that they have their EIDL money. And then, so this is concerning, and what kind of in the legal world, when you sign loan documents, there are covenants that you put in there that are kind of boundaries on how you can operate your business while you have that debt outstanding. And if they're true, they can be significantly impactful to many of our small businesses. And the one that jumped out to me was, if it's true, not being able to make distributions during the time that the debt's outstanding. Again, this is a 30-year loan. So just agree with Brad that I would absolutely have counsel look at this if before you sign up on the loan document, so you know what you're getting into.
The most important thing I've heard so far today is that Michael agrees with me. So I think we should end on the highest note possible. Michael, always good to see you.
Yep, that's great.
And looking forward, throughout the rest of this week, we'll be talking a lot about reopening. We have different guests coming in and looking at different states, but appreciate you joining us again today.